Imagine smiling for a picture with the man you've called your father your whole life, only to realize moments later that he might not be who he says he is. Stay till the end, because what this girl discovers will leave you speechless. And hey, if you believe every truth deserves to be told, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Tales Live, for more stories that touch your heart. Lily Thompson was a bright 17-year-old girl living in the small town of Cedar Ridge. Her world revolved around school, her camera, and her dad, Mark Thompson, a quiet, kind man who had raised her single-handedly since she was a toddler. Her mother had supposedly died in a car accident when Lily was just 2. At least that's what Mark always told her. Lily never questioned it. Her father was her rock, her hero, the one who packed her lunches, taught her how to ride a bike, and stayed up late to help her finish school projects. It was Father's Day weekend, and the local park was buzzing with families celebrating. Lily had convinced her dad to join her for the town's annual Father's Day photo booth event. "Come on, Dad. Just one picture for my scrapbook," she'd pleaded. Mark chuckled, reluctant at first, but finally agreed. Dressed in matching blue shirts, they posed together under a wooden arch decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Dad and Me." The photographer snapped a few pictures as they laughed. Mark ruffled her hair and she hugged him tightly. It was one of those perfect father-daughter moments that felt timeless. After the photo session, they walked to get ice cream. While Mark waited in line, Lily strolled toward the community board near the park's entrance where people pinned flyers about lost pets, garage sales, and events. She was scrolling through her phone, still smiling at the photo they had just taken, when her eyes froze on a bright yellow paper pinned to the board. Her heart skipped a beat. The paper read, "Missing child, Hannah Green, last seen 15 years ago." There was an old photo of a toddler with big brown eyes and a tiny birthmark just below her ear, a small crescent shape. Lily instinctively touched her neck. The same mark, identical. Her stomach twisted. The girl in the poster looked eerily like her baby pictures. She blinked several times, convincing herself it was just a coincidence. But the longer she stared, the harder it was to breathe. Her phone buzzed, her dad calling. "Lily, you coming?" She quickly tore her eyes away from the poster, her mind spinning. "Yeah, coming," she said, forcing a smile as she walked back. But every step felt heavy. When she looked at her father holding their ice cream cones, something inside her shifted. Suddenly, the man she had loved and trusted her entire life looked unfamiliar. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. The image of that missing poster haunted her. She searched online, "Hannah Green missing case." Dozens of results appeared. A 3-year-old girl taken from her mother's backyard in a nearby city. The case had gone cold after years of searching. There was a photo of the grieving mother, now older, still pleading for answers. Lily zoomed in on the child's picture again. The same brown eyes, the same smile, even the same tiny scar on the chin. She looked into the mirror and felt her heart shatter. "Could it be me?" she whispered. She tried to shake it off, but curiosity gnawed at her. She opened her old baby album, flipping through every photo her dad had ever shown her. Strangely, the earliest pictures began around age 3. Nothing before that. No hospital bracelets, no newborn photos, nothing. Dad always said he lost them in a fire, she recalled, but now that excuse felt hollow. The next morning, she couldn't take it anymore. "Dad," she said quietly over breakfast, "can we talk about Mom?" Mark froze mid-sip of his coffee. "What about her?" he asked, his voice suddenly guarded. I found something yesterday," she continued, trying to read his face. "A missing poster. The little girl looked like me." The spoon clattered from his hand. "You're imagining things, Lily," he said too quickly. "Finish your breakfast." But his trembling fingers told another story. That night, when Mark went to bed, Lily crept into his study. She opened his desk drawer, heart pounding. Inside, she found an old folder labeled Medical Records LT, but under it was another document, faded, yellowed, and torn. It read, "Birth certificate, Hannah Green." Her hands trembled as she lifted it. The date of birth, the city, everything matched. A cold wave of truth hit her like a thunderclap. Her entire life was built on a lie, and the man sleeping in the next room might not be her father at all. Lily sat frozen at her desk, the faded birth certificate still clutched in her trembling hands. The paper was fragile, but the truth it carried felt like a thunderstorm crashing through her chest. Her mind was spinning. Hannah Green, that was her real name. Not Lily Thompson. The girl she thought she was didn't exist, not really. She wanted to scream, to wake her father or whoever he really was and demand answers. But fear kept her paralyzed. What if he got angry? What if there was more to the story than she could handle? With shaking hands, she folded the certificate, slid it into her backpack, and quietly closed the drawer. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she tiptoed out of the study and into her room, barely daring to breathe until she was safely behind her locked door. Lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling, memories replaying in her mind like a cruel movie. All the times her dad avoided talking about her mother, the awkward way he changed the subject when she asked about their past, the missing baby pictures. It all started to make a terrifying kind of sense. The next morning, she avoided his eyes at breakfast. He noticed immediately. "You're quiet today," he said, trying to sound casual. "Everything okay?" Lily forced a smile and shrugged. "Just tired," she lied. But deep down, she was planning something. She needed proof, more than a paper hidden in a drawer. After school, instead of heading home, she went to the town library. She pulled up newspaper archives from the year she was born and searched Hannah Green missing case. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw the headline, "Mother pleads for return of abducted daughter, believes child still alive." There was a picture of a young woman, her eyes red from crying, holding a small stuffed bunny. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She remembered that bunny. She had that toy as a child, until one day her dad said it was too old and threw it away. She clicked on another article. Witnesses had seen a man leaving the neighborhood the day Hannah disappeared. He was described as average height, brown hair, quiet demeanor. Lily's blood turned to ice. That description matched her dad perfectly. She slammed the laptop shut, her pulse racing. "No," she whispered. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But every instinct screamed that it was true. Her entire childhood, birthday parties, camping trips, bedtime stories, suddenly felt like pieces of someone else's stolen life. When she got home that evening, Mark was in the living room flipping through an old photo album. "Hey, sweetie," he said, smiling. "I found some pictures from when you were little." Lily froze. The timing felt too perfect, too planned. "Where did those come from?" she asked carefully. "I thought they burned in the fire." Mark hesitated, then closed the album. I found a few that were stored in a box at work. Must have forgotten about them." His tone was calm, but there was something dark in his eyes, something that made Lily's stomach churn. "Can I see them?" she asked, her voice tight. He nodded and handed the album over. The photos were old and grainy. In one, she was a toddler in a park she didn't recognize. In another, she was sitting on Mark's shoulders near a house she didn't remember living in. The dates scribbled on the back didn't match the timeline he'd always told her. "Dad, when were these taken?" she asked softly. He swallowed hard. "Around the time your mom passed." Lily's chest ached. "You mean when you took me?" she wanted to say, but bit her tongue. Instead, she nodded and excused herself. Once inside her room, she packed a few clothes, the birth certificate, and her phone charger. She needed to get out, at least long enough to think clearly. She waited until she heard him snoring before sneaking out through the back door. The night air was cold, but her fear burned hotter. She walked for miles until she reached the local police station, her heart pounding with every step. Inside, a kind-looking female officer greeted her. "Can I help you, miss?" Lily hesitated, her throat dry. I think I'm a missing person," she whispered. The officer blinked, stunned. "What do you mean?" Lily pulled the birth certificate from her bag, her hands shaking. "My name isn't Lily Thompson. I think I'm Hannah Green." The next few hours were a blur of questions, paperwork, and quiet tears. They contacted detectives from the original case, and soon, her world turned into a whirlwind of flashing lights and serious faces. DNA samples were taken. Old records were reviewed. Every second felt like a lifetime. When the police told her she'd have to stay overnight for her safety, she nodded, too numb to speak. Meanwhile, at home, Mark woke to find her room empty. When he noticed the missing folder from his desk, panic washed over him. He ran to the window and saw police cars in the distance. His world began to collapse. He knew the truth had finally caught up to him. Lily sat alone in the station's waiting area, hugging her knees. The truth she had uncovered was heavy, but she also felt something else for the first time in her life. Hope. Somewhere out there, she had a real mother who had never stopped looking for her. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of the police station, painting thin golden lines across Lily's tired face. She hadn't slept all night. Every few minutes, her mind replayed the same thought over and over. I'm not Lily Thompson. I'm Hannah Green. The officers had confirmed that the missing child case had been reopened. DNA tests were being fast-tracked, and they had contacted the woman who had filed the original missing report, her real mother. Lily's heart raced every time someone walked by the waiting area, wondering if this was the moment her life would change forever. Around mid-morning, a police officer approached her gently. Hannah, there's someone here to see you. Lily's breath caught. The officer led her down a hallway toward a private room. Every step felt heavier than the last. When she entered, she froze. A woman stood by the window, clutching a small framed photo of a toddler. Her hair was streaked with silver now, her eyes red from years of crying. But there was something achingly familiar about them. The same warm brown, the same spark she saw every time she looked in the mirror. The woman turned slowly, and when their eyes met, she gasped, covering her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. Hannah? She whispered. Lily's throat tightened, her voice breaking. Mom! The woman, her real mother, rushed forward and pulled her into a trembling embrace. For a moment, the world fell silent. 15 years of emptiness collapsed into that single desperate hug. Both of them cried uncontrollably. I never stopped looking for you, her mother sobbed. Not for a single day. Lily clung to her, feeling both comforted and broken. He told me you died, she whispered through her tears. He told me you were gone. Her mother, whose name was Rebecca Green, pulled back slightly, brushing Lily's hair behind her ear.
He took you from me, Hannah.
I went inside for just a minute that day. When I came back, you were gone. I thought I'd lost you forever. Lily could barely breathe. Why did he do it? Why would he take me? Rebecca shook her head, pain etched deep into her face. He was your babysitter's brother. He had been helping her sometimes when I worked late shifts. The police said he became obsessed after his own wife lost their child in an accident. He must have snapped. When he disappeared, so did you. Lily's knees nearly buckled as she listened. Every memory she had of her father, Mark, flashed through her mind. His smile, his bedtime stories, his hugs, they were all built on a stolen life. I loved him, she said softly, almost to herself. He raised me, he cared for me. He wasn't cruel. Rebecca's face softened, torn between anger and sympathy. Maybe he loved you in his own way, she admitted. But that doesn't erase what he did. He took you from everyone who loved you. The door opened again and a detective stepped in. We've located Mark Thompson, he announced. He's agreed to come in peacefully. He says he wants to explain himself. Lily's breath hitched. Part of her wanted to run, to never see him again. But another part needed closure. I'll talk to him, she said firmly. I need to hear it from him. Later that afternoon, Lily sat in another small room, separated from Mark by a pane of glass. He looked older than she remembered, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. When he saw her, his lips trembled. Lily, he began, but she cut him off. That's not my name, she said quietly. He flinched, his gaze dropping. Hannah, then, he whispered. I never meant to hurt you. I know what I did was wrong, but you have to understand. I couldn't lose another child. Tears welled in Lily's eyes. You didn't lose one, you took one, she said, her voice cracking. You stole me from my mother. You made her live every day thinking I was dead. Mark's own tears finally fell. I know. I told myself I was saving you. That I could be the father you deserved. I built my life around that lie, and every day it ate at me. His voice broke. I loved you, Hannah. More than my own life. Lily's chest ached with conflicting emotions. Anger, sorrow, confusion, even pity. If you loved me, she said softly, you would have told me the truth. Silence hung heavy in the air. Finally, she stood, wiping her tears. I don't hate you, she said, her voice trembling, but I can't forgive you. Not yet. She turned and walked away, her legs shaking beneath her. Behind her, Mark whispered, I'm sorry, as officers led him away. That night, Lily sat in a small apartment her mother had arranged for them to stay in. Rebecca gently handed her a small, worn stuffed bunny, the same one from the photos. I kept it all these years, she said softly. Lily held it close, feeling a piece of her lost childhood return. I don't know who I am anymore, she admitted. Rebecca hugged her tightly. You're my daughter, she whispered. You're Hannah, and we'll figure the rest out together. For the first time in her life, Lily, or rather Hannah, felt both lost and found all at once. But little did she know, the shocking truth about her past wasn't over yet, because Mark had one final secret, one that would turn her world upside down again. The next few days passed like a blur. News stations picked up the story. Missing child found after 15 years. Cameras flashed, reporters crowded the police station, and strangers online called it a miracle reunion. But to Hannah, it didn't feel like a miracle at all. It felt like standing between two lives, both of which belonged to her, and yet neither truly did. She was home with her mother now, in a small sunlit house filled with memories that should have been hers. Childhood drawings still hung on the refrigerator, photo frames still held her baby pictures, and her old bedroom had been kept exactly as it was the day she disappeared. Everything was familiar yet foreign, like walking through a dream someone else had lived. Her mother, Rebecca, tried her best to ease her back into life. You don't have to rush anything, she said gently one morning, serving her pancakes just like she used to when Hannah was little. We'll take it one day at a time. Hannah smiled weakly, appreciating the warmth but feeling the weight of confusion pressing harder every day. She loved Rebecca deeply already, but she couldn't forget Mark. Every night she saw his face, the way he had cried during their last conversation. Despite everything he had done, a part of her still loved him. He had stolen her life, yes, but he had also been the only father she had ever known. One afternoon, an officer called. Hannah, he said, Mark Thompson has requested to see you one last time before he's transferred to a state prison. Hannah's heart skipped a beat. Rebecca frowned immediately. You don't have to go, she said firmly. That man has taken enough from you. But Hannah shook her head. I need to, she whispered. There's something he's not telling us. At the prison, the air was cold and sterile, and the buzzing of fluorescent lights echoed in the hallway. When Hannah stepped into the visitor's room, she saw him, Mark, sitting on the other side of the glass, dressed in orange, his eyes tired but soft. He smiled faintly. You came, he said, voice cracking. Thank you. Hannah sat down, unsure how to begin. Why did you want to see me again? She asked quietly. Mark took a deep breath. Because there's something you deserve to know. Something I didn't tell the police. Hannah's chest tightened. Another lie? He shook his head. No, the truth this time. He looked down at his trembling hands. The night I took you, it wasn't supposed to happen that way. I went to your house because I wanted to say goodbye. I was struggling after losing my daughter Emily. She was 3. She drowned while I was supposed to be watching her. His voice cracked into a whisper. Your babysitter, your mom's friend, knew me. She asked me to help with you sometimes. I never meant to hurt anyone. But that day, when I saw you playing with Emily's toy bunny, I broke. Tears filled Hannah's eyes. So you took me because you thought I could replace her? Mark nodded slowly. At first, yes. But then you called me Dad, and everything changed. I loved you like you were my own blood. I built my world around protecting you. I told myself I rescued you from pain, but really I was just rescuing myself from mine. He took a deep breath. There's more, Hannah. I didn't tell the police. Your father, your real one, he's still alive. Hannah froze. What? She whispered. Mom told me he died before I was born. Mark shook his head. No, he left after you were taken. He couldn't handle the guilt. Thought it was his fault because he was supposed to pick you up that day. I tracked him down years later, and he begged me not to tell Rebecca. Said he didn't deserve her forgiveness. Hannah's hands trembled as she pressed them against the glass. You knew where he was? All this time? Mark nodded, guilt weighing heavily in his eyes. He lives 3 towns over. Changed his name. He never remarried. I was going to tell you everything before I was arrested, but I didn't want to cause more pain. Hannah felt the ground shift beneath her. Her real father, alive nearby, living in silence. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Mark gave a faint smile. Because I don't want to take another secret to my grave. You deserve your whole truth, Hannah, not just the part I gave you. His voice broke again. Whatever you think of me, I hope someday you'll remember the love, not the lie. A guard approached, signaling the end of visiting hours. Hannah stood slowly, her heart heavy. "Goodbye." "Mark," she said softly. He smiled sadly. "Goodbye, my girl." As she turned to leave, she caught one last glimpse of him. The morning after Mark's confession, the world outside felt strangely still, as if holding its breath with her. Hannah sat at the kitchen table, staring at the piece of paper in front of her, a slip of information the detective had given her the night before. A name, an address, her real father's. After 15 years of not knowing who she truly was, after the storm of revelations and pain, the final missing piece was finally within reach. Yet Hannah hesitated. Meeting him meant reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. Rebecca noticed her staring. "You don't have to do this today," she said softly, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "You've been through enough." Hannah looked up, her eyes glistening. "I need to, Mom. I need to understand why he disappeared. Why he didn't come for me." Rebecca sighed, her heart torn between fear and hope. "Then I'm going with you," she said firmly. They drove in silence through winding back roads until they reached a small, weathered cabin tucked near the edge of the woods. The place looked lonely, forgotten, just like the man who lived there. Hannah's heartbeat thundered in her chest as she stepped out of the car. Every sound, the crunch of gravel, the whisper of the wind, felt magnified. Rebecca's hand trembled as she knocked on the door. For a long moment there was nothing. Then it creaked open. A man stood there, older than Rebecca, but still carrying the same sharp blue eyes Hannah had seen in her reflection countless times. His face was lined with guilt, his expression frozen in disbelief. "Rebecca?" he whispered. "Hannah?" The sound of her name on his lips made her knees weak. "It's really you." He stepped forward, tears instantly welling up. I thought I'd never see you again." Rebecca's voice trembled with emotion. "You knew she was alive. You knew, didn't you?" His lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, he nodded. "I found out years ago," he confessed, "when I saw a news article about a man moving to Cedar Ridge with a little girl who looked exactly like Hannah. I knew it was her. I tried to go to the police, but no one believed me. They said I was desperate, unstable, and by the time I gathered enough proof, he'd vanished again. I couldn't find you after that." Rebecca shook her head in disbelief. "You could have told me," she said, her voice breaking. "You could have come back." He lowered his eyes. "I didn't have the courage. I blamed myself for everything, for not being there that day, for losing our daughter. I didn't think you'd ever forgive me." Hannah listened silently, her emotions colliding like waves. Anger, sadness, confusion, all tangled together. "So you just disappeared?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You gave up on me?" Her father's eyes filled with pain. "No, Hannah. I never gave up. I watched from afar every year. Birthdays, school photos, anything I could find. I was too ashamed to show my face until I knew you were safe. But I never stopped loving you." Tears streamed down her cheeks. She wanted to hate him, to yell and make him feel her pain, but when she looked at him, she saw something raw and broken that mirrored her own heart. "You should have fought harder," she whispered. "But I guess we both lost 15 years to fear." She took a deep breath, her voice softening. "I don't know if I can forgive you, not yet. But I want to try." Rebecca stepped closer, her eyes glistening. "We can start over, all of us. No more secrets." Her words trembled, but they carried a strength that gave Hannah hope. For a long moment, the three of them just stood there, the silence between them heavy but healing. Then, without another word, her father reached out his hand. Slowly, cautiously, Hannah took it. They spent hours talking inside the small cabin. He showed them a box filled with letters he'd written but never sent. Letters to Hannah for every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone she'd missed. As Hannah read through them, her tears fell freely. Each word, though written years ago, wrapped around her heart like a long-lost embrace. By the time the sun dipped below the trees, something inside her had shifted. She realized that life wasn't about choosing one past over another. It was about understanding all the pieces that made her who she was. The girl who was taken, the girl who was raised in love, twisted by grief, and the girl who was finally found. She wasn't just Lily or Hannah. She was both. A few weeks later, she stood once more in that same park where everything had begun. The place she had taken that picture with Mark. The moment that had unraveled the lie. She held the old photo in one hand and a new one in the other, her, Rebecca, and her father smiling beneath the sunlight. "Life is strange," she whispered, looking up at the sky. "Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's also what sets us free." As a breeze swept through the park, she felt a strange peace wash over her. For the first time in her life, Hannah wasn't lost. She was whole,